Welcome to the LowCarbMD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor. Guys, welcome to the LowCarbMD podcast. This is soon to be an SMHP production. Okay, Society of Metabolic Health Practitioner production. It's soon to be. We're finalizing the last kinks. The Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners president and board member is joining us today. We have Doug Reynolds, who is a co-founder along with Pam Devine of LowCarbUSA. And today we have Dr. Laura Buchanan, who you guys are going to find out more about pretty soon. She did her medical school training at University of Florida, and she did her family medicine residency at Wake Forest, and she is a board certified family medicine doctor, and you guys will be learning a lot more about her pretty soon. So we are here, and she is a board member and a founding member of the SMHP. So this is like a nice powwow. I'm happy that you guys are all here. And Doug, I can't wait to talk about, we've talked about the conferences in the past, but today I want to go more into you. Certainly we want to talk about San Diego, which is coming up, and it's a big conference, huge speakers there. Asim Malhotra, I believe, there was another rock star there. Volek, Finney is coming, correct?
Finney, yeah.
Steve Finney is coming, and of course, Brian Lenskis is also talking there. I think I saw Gary Taubes on the list too. I mean, really, it's just a monumental lineup, and this conference I know has affected so many people's lives in such a positive way, and I know now this is under the SMHP hat, which I think is a really great step that you and I, we talked about 3 years ago or 2 years ago. So let's start. First of all, how is everybody?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Really well. And just by the way, Laura is also accredited with the SMHP as well, right? So that's
So she's a founding member.
Yeah, but she's also accredited, officially accredited. She's done that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is I'm happy to have Laura. We're happy to have you here. I know Brian is so upset that he can't be here. He recovered from COVID and he's with his family and he couldn't make it today, but he's going to be jealous that you guys are both here.
Yeah, well, he'll have to live with it.
Yeah. All right. So Doug, let's get started, because I don't think people know your origin story. So can you walk us through so you are now the president of the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, which have over 300 doctors, over 2,000 people on the website, right? Which is huge.
Listed as providers,
Yeah, this is the first time that the metabolic health community has organized like this. So I'm going to ask you, how did you do it? How did you herd stray cats? And how did you get started? Because how do we go from Doug Reynolds, the average guy, the engineer, to Doug Reynolds, the CEO of LowCarbUSA, working with Adele on a consensus statement, to Doug Reynolds, the president of SMHP, and somebody who's herding the cats?
Well, that's a long story. You want to start from LowCarbUSA? I mean, I'll try and do the elevator pitch. Basically, I was a distance athlete. Running the Comrades Marathon was my big thing in South Africa, which is like 90 kilometers, about 55 miles. And thought I was bulletproof and could eat anything I wanted. And, but I was running thousands of miles a year. So it wasn't really a fair reflection. But then as I started to get older, I was still trying to run almost as much as that, but I wasn't managing because my knees were sore and I was just really struggling, and I was putting on weight, which I couldn't get off again. I thought I was just being lazy. And I don't know, I got introduced to the concept of a ketogenic diet. And
from where did you first hear about it?
Well, it's amazing. It was actually a friend of mine that I had been involved with previously. And he was starting an exogenous ketones business, part of a group that was, and he sent me an email that said ketones, a better source of fuel to glucose or something like that. And I was just at that stage. I just stood on the scale and seen that I was about 35 pounds over what I used to consider my fighting weight, which never really strayed much. And I was horrified. And then, like, literally a couple of days later, I got this email, and it just, any other time I would have just ignored it, but it just was at the right time. And so I started investigating. It turned out that it was a brand new company they were just launching, and they'd even run out of product already. And so I couldn't get anything for more than a month. But in the process of deciding whether this was even a good thing, I investigated. I didn't even know what ketosis was. I don't know what rock I crawled out from under, but I didn't even know what ketosis meant or what it was. So I did a bunch of research over about 3 weeks. I basically stopped working, and I just dove into this like 8 hours a day. It was crazy. But by the end of the 3 weeks, I was totally convinced that this would explain the issues that I was having, this weight that I was continuing to put on, even issues that I had when I was younger, when I was actually running these races, where I used to train really, really hard. And then I would listen to Tim Noakes and do a bunch of carb loading the 3 days before. And effectively, I was just poisoning myself. And so on the day of the race, I used to feel shocking and never felt like I always left something out on the road. I always felt like I should have been able to do so much better, and I never did. And so I pulled the trigger. I took Pam shopping, which horrified her, and I had a list which horrified her even more. And we went and bought ribeye steaks and full cream, heavy whipping cream, and all the stuff that you learn that you need to get when you start the keto diet, right? And we just started doing it. We didn't, in those days, I couldn't find resources and I had no clue. And we just learned by trial and error. We had great response in the first few weeks, and then we hit a bit of a plateau, and we just kept researching and learning and stuff. And then bit by bit, all that weight came off in about 5 months, everything. But there's the respiratory issues, and the knee pain that I was experiencing was gone, and I was able to run again. I was really loving running again. It was just the most incredible thing. I wasn't very sick like so many people in our community are now. They're really, really sick, and so when they reverse it or they recover, it's a massive thing for them. But in the context of my life, I was just miserable. I was hating life, and suddenly that turned around, and I was enjoying it again. And I was, able to do, at the time I was doing martial arts training, and we would do like 2 back-to-back classes in the evening, and I couldn't get out of bed the next day. Before, once I started this, I could hop out of bed. I even went, I would go get out of bed and go for a run the next day. And to me, that was one of the biggest things, was how quickly I recovered, and from a big effort like that. And my life just got so much better. And so I started. It was my birthday, and we were at dinner, and all the work people that were there left, because you don't want to talk about keto all the time because the people are just sick of hearing it. But once they were gone, we were talking, and I was pounding my fist and saying to Pam, like, we need to do something about this. The business that we were working in at the time, we put on big conferences. So I knew how to put on a conference. And I'd heard about these other little ones around the country, and I just decided we need to do something. San Diego, summer, tourist destination, let's put 1,000 people in the room. And I got up the next morning, and I started writing to people. Gary Taubes was one. And Steve Finney was another one, and he kind of wrote back to me and said, like, who are you? And because I had never even been to a low carb meeting before. And he said, like, you know, how much money have you got? Don't you want to rather put your efforts and money into financing some kind of research or whatever in this field that might be, you know, money better spent? But that didn't really sound a good thing, and I didn't have any money. So, but Gary Taubes responded to me, and I knew, you know, it was an honorarium to pay him, and whatever was a lot of money, and we went backwards and forwards, and eventually he agreed to speak to me on the phone, and he said to me afterwards, he just wanted to find out if he thought that I would be able to do anything, actually make this happen. And we spoke on the phone for about an hour, and Pam was like off to the side down the passage, like listening in. I had it on speaker. And at the end of it, he said to me, okay, if you do this, I'll come and speak. And that was the turning point. I mean, I was speechless. So I put the phone down and I looked at Pam and I just said, like, shit, this is on, you know. And we didn't have a website. We didn't have a social media presence. We established all of that and put on the event in 6 months. And we didn't put 1,000 people in the room, but we put about 350 in the room, which was probably 250 more than any other similar sort of conference. There was only a couple of them, but there was this little bubble of like about 100 people that used to attend these things. So people had to talk me off the ledge because I was so disappointed that we didn't put 1,000 people in the room. But they had to make me realize that what we had achieved in 6 months was pretty astounding. And I have come to see that now, but at the time I was bitterly disappointed. But yeah, I mean, you know, people came to us and said, when's the next one? And so we didn't even think about having the next one. So I stayed up the whole Saturday night during the conference, creating an event page for the next year's event, and like got people to register for a big reduction if they would. Like, I didn't even know who the speakers would be, just saying like, it's going to be similar to what you experienced here. And that helped us actually pay the bills and get out of the hotel that year, because we were planning everything on having 1,000 people and we didn't get that. And so we came up short funding wise, and literally I was wondering how I was going to get out of the hotel, because we owed them a lot of money still. And selling these tickets for the following year actually managed to get us out of the hotel. And yeah, I mean, it just built from there. And then people started saying, what about Florida? And so we put one on in Florida in the January, and the next minute it just became a thing, you know, like not only an annual thing, but what's a biannual thing. Like it was like twice a year. And then we put on other ones in San Francisco. We even got invited to take some speakers over to Indonesia. We put one on in Jakarta, which was an amazing experience. And so, yeah, we've done about 17 conferences now, and
that's crazy.
It's pretty amazing.
I would say, in terms of, I don't know of any other educator that's accomplished that in the low carb metabolic health space, right? Who's put on upwards of 20 conferences. And, you know, on top of that, I think we didn't even discuss, you know, your work with Adele, you know, to really solidify a consensus statement.
Yeah.
Therapeutic carbohydrate restriction. You know, the Adele Height, the basically the giant and the genius, the ferocious patient advocate that she was, who unfortunately passed away. Just if you've been living under a rock and just hearing it, you worked really closely with her.
Yeah, I did. And I mean, that was all Gary as well. I mean, he 2018 or something, he suggested that we do like a session soliciting feedback from doctors and practitioners who were actually trying to do this in their practice. And it was helping him to research his latest book And he suggested that he introduced me to Adele, and it just suggested that we get her to mediate the session. And so just talking to her about that, and just she had this vision in her head, and I think he won't take credit for it, but I'm pretty sure Gary knew that our conversations would go further than just talking about mediating a panel, right? And it did, and she just had this vision about therapeutic carbohydrate reduction being standard of care, but not the standard of care, but an alternative standard of care. So we're not telling anybody they're right or wrong or whatever, just that if you don't eat carbs, your metabolism's different, and here's a standard of care that is applicable for you. And in her legal definition that she brought out about it does say that it doesn't come from what you taught in college. It doesn't come from a set of guidelines, but a set of guidelines can help to shape that. And so we decided to start by creating a set of clinical guidelines for doctors and practitioners who wanted to be able to utilize this in their practice. It gave them a set of guidelines. And I mean, I put from all the people I've got to know, so many high profile people, and I put a bunch of them on a panel of advisors, and she kicked me out of the kitchen. She just said, like, you're not a doctor, you're not a practitioner, you're not a clinician. And so you can't have anything to do with this, creating this document. So I should have been offended, but I wasn't, because I knew what she was saying was right. And all I did was sit in the background and take barriers out of the way wherever anything came up. And in 6 months, we got that document published, basically. And I found out later that during that 6 months, she was actually defending her PhD at the same time. And she basically wrote that document and then bounced it off these 15 people that we'd put on the panel until everybody was happy that it was ready to publish. And it was just the most astounding effort that I've ever seen. I'm telling you, it was incredible. But we published it on LowCarbUSA, and it got a lot of traction, and a lot of people saw it, and a lot of people were excited because so many doctors kind of were getting it that low carb was at least an option that should be offered to their patients, but they were scared to do it because it wasn't considered standard of care. And suddenly now there was the standard of care is a consensus, right? And so more and more people signing a petition that says, like, we support this, and we could take it to court if something ended up in court. We would have this massive community of people that the judge could poll and see, is this the consensus as to what would be the correct course of action, or is it an appropriate course of action in this particular situation? And so more doctors were now adding this as a arrow in their quiver, basically, than would have been prepared to do it if this document didn't exist. But it was never the right place for it. And you started with conversations of, I believe, I didn't even know about it, but you had a conversation with Pam in Boca saying, like, we need to have this organization and Doug needs to do it. But I actually picked it up with you putting it out on Twitter saying we need an organization, an umbrella for all these people in this low carb space that need a unifying organization. And so we started talking and agreed on the fact that we needed a nonprofit. And so off I went. I learned how to create a nonprofit and set that all up. Set up a board of directors, which
this was about 2 years ago, right, Doug?
Sorry?
This is 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, it was 2020. It was about February 2020 that I saw your Twitter thing, and then we started talking about it. And
No, 'cause
we
talked about it
in the
at-
December we managed to actually go live with the thing. So
Yeah, I remember it was, I guess 2019 Boca is when we talked about it in person. I think it was you, me, and one other doctor. I forget who.
it might have even been 2020 because that was the last one just before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And I believe during that conference somewhere, that was the one that you were at, that you had a conversation with Pam. But I never really spoke to you about it until I chased you down after you put that thing on Twitter and said, like, because it was like, hey, we're already doing this on LowCarbUSA, but it's not, because we had introduced this concept of professional membership, right? Where I realized that we needed something like that, but I put it out there on LowCarbUSA, and it just wasn't, as I said, it wasn't the right place. And so we got a handful of people that signed up for it, but it just never got any traction. So when you started talking about it, I said, let's talk about how we can take what I started to try and do in LowCarbUSA and do it better and do it properly and do it so that it's something that people want. And that's where we came up with we came up with the idea of a nonprofit. And Eric Westman is one of the people that we put on the board of directors, and he was the one we have to give him credit for coming up with the name for it, the Society for Metabolic Health Practitioners. And I think that's just so important that we wanted it to be we still wanted obviously to be a uniting organization. And so having something that had keto or low carb or something in the name would be alienating other people who feel that they can address metabolic health in different ways. And we want, as long as people understand that we want to do this through lifestyle and dietary type interventions as opposed to drugs, then they need to be part of this conversation. So it's an amazing name. I think it's a unifying thing, and yeah, it's taken off. As you mentioned, I think we've got close to 350 active paying members now. We've got about 2,000 providers, because you can put your name in and all your information, contact information, if you're a provider or practitioner that buys into this and works with their patients on this, so that people can. There's a big, awesome search engine there now that people can try and find people in their zip code or city or country, even if people sign up from outside of the US. But it's a place that they can find help. And then if they want to be able to participate in the grand rounds that we do, if they want to become accredited at the end of the day, participate in the forums and contribute to furthering this message, then they need to become members, and there is a fee involved in that. And I mentioned earlier, we've got about, I think it's probably over that now, but the last time I looked, it was about 50 people that already are accredited, and they are able to use MHP behind their name. They've got this really cool orange badge that they can display on their website and communications and stuff like that.
Can I talk about so what it takes to get accredited?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the beauty. The issue is prior to us coming together and saying, how can we need to create a common language, right? We need to create a common language amongst providers, right? We need to have standards, and the document you and Adele and basically Adele, kind of worked on, as you mentioned, and you put together, really you organized, this serves as a standard for how we practice the clinical guidelines. And then we need to talk about the basic level of information a doctor needs to know, right? And we had to go through various CMEs, approve those CMEs, Nutrition Network, Diet Doctor, and we have to assess, and certainly the ethics course, right, and Nutrition Network, which is critical to the accreditation. right? We had to approve a minimum set of education, right, needed, right, to get certified. And, we're working on other accreditations like fellowships potentially in the future, and, certainly, research kind of academic
Clinical
research
experience as
pathway.
well was another one.
Yeah, so we created a language, right, which I think was a fantastic thing. And now, somebody can say, I know this basic language, right? And they continue to get, education from the SMHP through these, CEUs, and we're working on making it, AMA, PR1, CMEs. We're working on that, and that's coming soon through these grand rounds, right, which have been fantastic. I mean, we've heard, Gary Fedke speak. We've heard Brian Lenskis, myself, Laura. We've just seen amazing presentations. Tony Hampton's from this past grand rounds was fantastic.
Yeah.
And we're not only creating a standard for education, we're also keeping people up to date, right? And organizing the different doctors together so that you can stay basically, up to date with regards to metabolic health and how to translate that into clinical practice. This is huge. I mean, Laura, don't you wish it existed in medical school?
As I wanted to add, this is what we were missing in medical school and residency, is you can fix, reverse, treat so many chronic medical conditions, prevent them from developing in the first place if you had the knowledge that is available now if you become a metabolic practitioner.
And that's huge. I mean, what was it like? I mean, so you're a fresher. I'm over 10 years out of medical school. You're 3 years out of medical school. So what was it like being like the odd one out who's listening to the Low Carb MD podcast, which is soon to be an SMHP production? How is it like, going through med school and hearing a different voice, I guess, hearing a different side of it,
So initially it was hard. I didn't know when to speak up, when to argue versus just, let them voice their opinion and I'd say, okay. But through residency, I really have, as I got my MHP, I studied more, I felt way more confidence in the science. And I was like, no, this is so real. You can't unsee what the amazing outcomes patients can have. And other people around me started seeing that as well. And so I actually did a presentation to my residency on reviewing the TCR guidelines that are on the website. And people are interested. They believe and they see the power. It's just incredible. I had a patient this week, since 11 years old. He has type 2 diabetes, been on insulin since 11. And he is now 21. Been working with him for over a year. Finally got him to go keto, and he is off 120 units of insulin, 120 down to 0 in 1 week off of Jardiance. His sugar average on all of that insulin was 225. On keto, his sugar average is 90. I mean,
it's
you
the
can't
weight
believe
loss.
it.
No, it must be the weight loss, Laura.
Oh, yeah.
He lost like 1 million pounds in 3 seconds. Right?
Yeah.
That's what it was. That's definitely what it was.
And his mom and they didn't believe it. He's like, I've been on insulin since I was 11. This isn't possible. And it's like, no, it is possible. This is how powerful it can be.
So can we talk about this a little bit? Because Doug, when we came together, this is exactly what we talked about. I remember saying 3 things. 1, Doug Reynolds and Pam Devine shouldn't shoulder the burden, the financial burden. We need to organize. 2, we need a home and a standard language, right? And 3, we need to keep people, we can't let people veer off into voodoo land, right? We have to draw them back into medicine, evidence, and there's a tendency, when you adopt diet and lifestyle to go, to accept maybe less credible evidence, right? But we need to keep people grounded. And I have to be honest, in these last 2 years, we have definitely accomplished that. and now with, kind of rebranding the Low Carb USA conferences as SMHP, conferences and the Symposium of Metabolic Health, I believe they're called.
That's
right?
what they're called now, yes.
Right, the Symposium of Metabolic Health in San Diego and Boca. This is exciting, right? Because it's not, now we're taking the next steps to become even more legitimate, even more of a hub, and even more of a resource, a service to people like me and Laura, who went to medical school and was like, what the hell? Like, why didn't I know that I can help this person? Right. And when you tell your colleagues that, right, what do they say?
They don't believe it. They're amazed. I mean, they do believe it, but they're shocked. Like you don't hear that.
It shouldn't be. And how sad is it that, a third-year resident has to be the one to do this? What about all those attendings that are there? What about the program directors that are there? What about them? Right? They watched that person in that clinic. That clinic has probably been there that patient has been in that clinic for 10 years. Right? Where's the personal responsibility from your mentors, And so, and Doug, you and I saw that. You saw it much earlier than I did, but I wish the SMHP existed 10 years ago.
Sure.
And we made that happen. And I don't think people understand, like, we made that happen. And really, I would say it's like 99% you and Pam and like 1% Tro the agitator, and I'm just so blessed and honored to even be a board member with you. I got to be honest, I think you've done more for low carb education than any doctor I know. Maybe Eric Westman, we'll put him, obviously he's, David Ludwig, these people, Gary Taubes also has done a lot, but you're up there. 17 conferences, 2,000 people registered on your site, over 350 accredited, practitioners, right? So you're it, man.
It's so true. I mean, any future patient that I'm fortunate enough to be able to help with low carb, it's from what I've learned from Low Carb MD podcast, Low Carb USA, SMHP. I mean, and then all the people you mentioned reading their books.
Yeah, it gives people credibility and a home that they've never had before, and courage that they can go and do this maybe and talk to their patients about it because they feel like they've got backing. They feel like if somebody challenges them, they have a whole community now that will stand behind them that they didn't ever have before. So it's amazing. When you talk about doctors not knowing about stuff, I think my favorite story about this is Dr. David Unwin, who is basically a legend in the UK low carb space.
He's a legend here.
Well, as well, but even more so in the UK. And I'm excited that he's coming out he and his wife are both coming out to speak in Boca in January. And I always tell his story that he was disillusioned and ready to retire because he hated not being able to help anybody. And then he got a patient to come in because she wasn't filling her meds and didn't recognize her when she came into the waiting room. Basically told her like she'd have to wait because he was expecting another patient any minute. And she said, "Nah, that's me." And what I told that story secondhand a lot of times, but when I interviewed him for a podcast, he told me that what I didn't know was that she actually shouted at him. Like she yelled at him. She was so angry that he, as her doctor, did not know this or tell her about it. And that she had to go and do some clandestine search on the internet and find out about it. And she joined an organization where they wouldn't even admit doctors. If they found out somebody tried to join and they found out it was a doctor or she was a doctor, they wouldn't admit them because they knew that, well, they didn't know, but they thought that these doctors would come in and what happened in most cases where they would try and scupper the whole conversation. And she was really angry that she had to find this to save her life, basically. And he was mortified and he was embarrassed. And he said, like, he went out and started studying about this and realized that, but like Tim and that, hey, like I've had this wrong all along. And he started changing his practice, and everybody started to get better. And suddenly he was loving practicing again. And he's eventually been allowed to join that organization, just by the way, and actually does an enormous amount of work with them. But it took him a long time to prove to them that he was genuine and that he intended good things here. And so they've let him in so he can help them with this. Yeah, amazing people and amazing stories, and so many of them. It's a personal, like Brian Lenski is an example that he kind of started to do it on the sly for himself because he was getting fat and sick, following the advice that he was giving all of his patients who were also staying fat and sick, and they weren't improving. And then he started to see improvements for himself. And then he came to LowCarbUSA in San Diego in 2017, I think it was. And that just changed everything. He didn't even need the SMHP. I mean, he went home with the courage just from seeing all the science that was behind this, that he started talking to his patients about it the next day. And I mean,
yeah, and
it's amazing.
Yeah. And I do feel, I feel bad for the patients who are following the advice. That story you told made me think we were doing group medical visits where patients were wearing continuous glucose monitors. And this one day, this patient came in and he was so angry because he ate exactly what his doctor told him to for breakfast, some oatmeal and banana, and his sugar he saw go up above 250. And he's like, I've been doing this for years, trying to get healthier, and I keep telling I'm doing the wrong thing, but then I'm doing exactly what they're telling me. And he was oatmeal and fruit. It's a healthy breakfast, but not for him.
So, I mean, it's crazy kind of, and I think the glucose meters have been such an important tool to help have patients have faith in us, right? Right. Why should they trust this band of, I mean, yeah, we have Eric Westman as on the board. Yes, we have, Dr. Mark Cucuzella on the board. Yes, we have, Dr. Rob Sybis and Laura and myself and you, Doug, but why trust us, right? And that CGM has been such a valuable tool to show them. But I think, one of the things I wanted to highlight is, coming back to these conferences, all Brian needed, Dr. Lenskis, to change his practice was that networking, that backing, he went to your conference, and I remember him telling me, he's like, the light was on, once you hear, you can't unhear. Once you see, you can't unsee. Right. And that was enough. And, I'm so, I'm so excited. I wish I can come to San Diego. It's just such an all-star lineup there. Asim Malhotra is like one of my personal heroes. Gary Taubes as well. It's just such an amazing lineup that's going to be there. And this is really the flagship conference. I'm also excited. I will be at Boca, which, we're talking about getting a dedicated food addiction workshop, which I think is going to be great. And above all, what we are asking people also is we are accepting posters. We are going to be doing posters at these conferences, and we want to up the scientific rigor of these conferences. And so, if I'm not mistaken, people can submit their posters now for San Diego, but also for Boca.
For Boca as well, yeah. So we literally, this is going to air maybe in a week. So by then, everything will be live, and we will be promoting it as well. And we were having a chat a bit before we came on air there that for San Diego, the timing is kind of tight. But we also want to remind people that there's no restrictions on whether or not they've used that or displayed that poster at another function or event. that if they want to show it again here or do it again here, they are welcome to do that. And we encourage it, in fact. One day when we get thousands of applications, then we might have to put a restriction like that in place. But right now, this is the first time we're introducing the concept of posters at these events. We're trying to sort of take it to the next level. And so, yeah, as long as it promotes diet and lifestyle interventions for metabolic health, basically, then that abstract will get accepted.
Yeah, case reports, posters. If you guys have anything you want to present, submit it. You still have time for San Diego. And just so people know, when you go to a medical conference, there's very often posters and various different abstracts presented along with keynote speakers. So this is a very common thing at scientific conferences. So this is absolutely a perfect evolution for the SMHP and these two flagship conferences. So get them in, that'll be online and get them in, if not for Boca, if not for San Diego, for Boca. And that's going to be pretty fantastic. Anything else about these conferences you want to mention, Doug?
Well, I think maybe because when we first announced it, there were some people that were a bit confused about it. So basically, what's happened is that the SMHP has, our board of directors has decided that putting on high-level, high-quality learning conferences and stuff for education and learning is something that we wanted to do. And but we don't have the tools and stuff to put a conference on yet. And so that was where we thought, okay, well, let's get LowCarbUSA and so it's now an SMHP event, Symposium for Metabolic Health by the SMHP, but it's hosted by LowCarbUSA. So LowCarbUSA has got the whole infrastructure to put this thing on. And we're already starting, everything was planned and was going to happen in August anyway. So they're going to continue to do that. And it's now hosted by LowCarbUSA, but it's actually an SMHP event now. And so, and one of the things we've talked about is that down the road, SMHP there'll be other SMHP conferences that will be hosted by possibly other organizations, Low Carb Down Under, Low Carb Denver, any other organization that puts on a conference and they want to up the profile of that conference, they can apply to us to have it be accepted as an SMHP event, but it will still be hosted by, so they don't lose autonomy. They still control the event. We just kind of have a bit of oversight to make sure that we're happy with the content and stuff. But yeah.
I think, bottom line, the SMHP is growing, and I think growing in a good way. Some growing pains, some changes along the way, but I think this is all definitely a step in the right direction. And we needed this. We needed a not-for-profit. We needed you and Pam. We needed those conferences. We needed doctors working together. And people may not know, but pretty soon there'll be a research project from the SMHP off the ground. So a lot of exciting things.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something else the SMHP is going to be offering that's going to be really helpful is they've got a resources committee that's going to be resources for clinicians, patients. Resources will be curated. Others might be made new by the SMHP. But we want it to be easy for a new provider to bring low carb or metabolic health into their practice and provide the material to show its effectiveness to other practice members in case they get pushback and say, no, this is a valid thing that I'm doing. And it's all set up so they're not getting tons of pushback and not being able to help patients.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I forgot where I was going with this, but the clinical guidelines are just that. They are clinical guidelines, but it's not a tool, right? They're guidelines telling people what they need to do. But in order to be able to do it effectively, they need to have tools that they can use. So there's going to be tools, like you mentioned, there's going to be tools that help train and help the practitioner to do their job. And then there's other tools that they will be able to give to their patients to help them do what they're asking them to do. And I think both of those things are going to be super useful.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm excited for everything that's happening. I'm excited to I'll be live streaming, or there is a live streaming ticket, I believe, right?
Correct, yes. We've always had that before with on the LowCarbUSA side, we've always had that, but it wasn't really promoted very well, to be honest. And there wasn't really much response to it. But then when COVID came and we did, the virtual San Diego conference and the virtual Boca conference, suddenly everybody realized that this concept of live stream was actually pretty useful. And so now we have hundreds of people that join all of these conferences now, the live stream version of it. So the people that can't get the time off work, the people who can't afford it a lot of times because it costs a lot to travel. You got to travel, hotel, the cost of the ticket. So the ticket's cheaper for the live stream, and you don't have to travel, and you get access to the recordings afterwards. So even if you can't watch it that weekend, maybe you're on call or something, you can watch it the following week or whatever, and still be able to, the CMEs are still available to you, and you're still able to apply for those. So it's been really cool to be able to have that work so much better than it was working before. We only, we had maybe 15 or 20 people that would join the live stream. Now, the virtual one that we did in San Diego, we had about 850, and we have at least, I think we had about 400 on at this last San Diego event as live stream people. So it's working well.
That's absolutely just astounding. That's absolutely amazing. I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. So if you're in the audience and you have a question, you can. Laura, I'm going to give you some parting words to say before we grab some questions, and parting questions to ask before we grab some questions. Dr. Buchanan, I'm sorry. So help me out. Did we miss anything?
I think we hit the big points. I'm so excited for the future of what the SMHP is going to be bringing to really the country and at an international level. I think my vision is to put ourselves out of business, reverse chronic disease, metabolic health, reverse diabetes. And
there's only use for doctors is going to be to fix broken legs and stuff like that once we're done with this, right?
Look, that's the mission, right? And diabetes, and obesity, and metabolic syndrome. This has been awesome, Doug. We have Brian Wiley, Vic Basmagian. Vic's got awesome mixes. If you're in Canada, please, get Vic's mixes. He doesn't pay me to say that. They're just awesome mixes. He's here in the audience, and he says he's looking forward to a Canadian Boca. He's looking forward to it. So we got to set up a conference in Montreal or Toronto or something. But Brian Wiley says, he's so glad that we're all working to build up with this community, and he feels like we're changing lives. Any parting words, Doug?
No, I think that's just it, changing lives. But we rely on people like Brian to do our work for us. I mean, we can only reach so many people. The only way that we reach more people is for everybody that's listening, for everybody that participates, for everybody that experiences the value of this, that they go out and tell other people about it. And I know a lot of the time people get sick of hearing about it. You say it's like Fight Club, you know, what happens, but don't talk about keto.
Yeah.
But we need people to talk about it. We need people, the more people that talk about it, the further this message is going to spread, because some people won't listen, but some people will. You know, that one person like me was just at the right place at the right time in their lives. When you say something to them that can make the difference and that will turn their lives around, and very often will save their lives. And I tell you, because people write to us about it all the time. But thank you so much. You saved my life. And that's pretty powerful. And you speak to one person, you never know that you could be saving their lives. And even if you don't end up finding out that that's what happened, it's something that you can be proud of.
Guys, this has been awesome. Dr. Laura Buchanan, I know we're going to be seeing a lot more great things from you.
Thank you.
Doug Reynolds, the co-founder of LowCarbUSA, president of the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. You can go to thesmhp.org. And I believe we also have Metabolic Health Practitioners, metabolic-practitioners.org. We got both of those, but the smhp.org. And you can follow us on social media and get accredited. So we are absolutely happy to have you here. You are my role model. You know, you're a mentor. I consider you a mentor and a friend. And I just want to say, guys, if you want to get educated, want to cultivate a community, want to learn, whether you're interested in low carb or you're a doctor or medical student listening like Laura was at one point, go to go to the Symposium of Metabolic Health in San Diego or the Symposium of Metabolic Health in Boca. These conferences are invaluable. And if you can't go, get on and watch the live stream, and you can get, CMEs, CEUs. So this is an incredible value, in my opinion. So Doug, thank you for everything you've done.
Yeah, just maybe quickly, someone talking about Canada. I mean, there are conferences that go on up there in Canada. So
he wants you to come up there.
Well, but what we want to do is maybe approach those people and see if they're interested in turning those into symposia for metabolic health, right? And then they could be presented by or hosted by whatever organization is there in Canada, and then we can help with it, and we can make a trip up there and actually be a part of it, because that we can't just keep putting on thousands of conferences. We need people in those places to put them on and host them and present them as SMHP events. That would be awesome. Take another step up.
Yeah, Vic from Vic's Mixes, he says, again, I'm not paid to say this. I have no sponsorship from him. I just love his stuff. But Vic says he's going to be your first volunteer. So when you come up to Canada, he's going to be your first volunteer.
Well, maybe you can volunteer to actually host the event. We can start.
There you go, Vic.
Do it.
There you go. All right, guys. Thank you so much, listeners. I see the health coaches here, Brian Wiley and Amy Igus. Guys, everybody who's listening, Chris, who's in the background, everybody, thank you who's been a part of this, been a part of the app, been a part of Patreon, who supported us. And we really appreciate it. And you guys keep us going. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been great.
Cheers.
Always love talking to you guys.